We were driven to the diet, was the last resort.
But the difference it's made to our family is just phenomenal.
Lindsay had various problems, and Heather was looking for something, didn't really know what, and the book literally plopped off the shelf in front of her when she was in Big W, and looked at the information that was in it, and bingo, there was apparently answers to the problems.
Children have changed in the last 30 years. Behaviour and learning problems, asthma, depression, youth suicide and teenage violent crime are all increasing. What our children eat has changed too. Supermarkets now control about 80% of our food, up from 20% in the 1950s. Their distribution chains encourage the use of additives in highly processed foods. As well, when fruit and vegetables are picked unripe for long shelf life, their chemical profile is changed. Sue Dengate has been writing and speaking to parents about the effects of food chemicals for more than 15 years.
Parents assume that they will know if their children are affected by foods or that someone will tell them, but that's not what happens. As the level of potentially harmful food chemicals have slowly increased in our foods, their effects have crept up and have gradually come to be regarded as normal or as new illnesses that require medication.
Sue's husband, Dr. Howard Dengate, is a food scientist concerned about the safety of food additives.
Consumers don't realise that they're not protected. You see, food additives are not tested for their effects on children's behaviour and learning before they're approved, nor are they monitored afterwards.
Food regulators tell us that so few children are affected by food additives that they are not worth worrying about. But that's not what the science says.
Now, I think the science is completely compelling about the effects of food additives on children's health and behaviour. But you've got to remember that food regulators are strongly influenced by paid food lobbyists.
So, how many children are affected? This is what happened when a sporting team went additive-free for 2 weeks.
When I was asked to coach the local under-10 rep T-ball team, I asked the kids to go additive-free. These were all normal kids. They hadn't been diagnosed with anything. There was no specific reason to put them on that regime. But I knew it was going to be a really long, hard carnival. They had to play a lot of games close together with not much chance of a break. It was going to be hot. They needed to focus. They needed to be able to perform. On this diet, the parents noticed, even before we got into the championships, that their children were happier at home, they were calmer, life was nicer, and I kept receiving comments unsolicited from the parents about how happy they were with their children. The end result was we played 9 games in 3 days. The kids were undefeated, convincingly undefeated. Nobody came within 12 runs of us in any game. We went into the final, they won by 15 runs. We had children from other teams, under 16s, under 19s, being sent over by their coaches, some of these kids state representatives, to see how the game should be played. They were all sent to watch this tiny team of T-ballers play the game the right way. It doesn't get any better than that.
And this is what happened when a small school in northern New South Wales decided to go additive-free.
I really don't know if we're going to see a change because I have never seen kids eat so well. Maybe it's because they knew I was coming, but they're all eating a sandwich, an apple, and they're having water. They're already eating really well. Synthetic antioxidants, look at those. What about sulfites? Okay, nitrates.
Parents have been asked to cut additives from the children's diets, and the school is providing additive-free breakfast at no cost.
We didn't have a complete take-up, but we've probably got about 70 to 80% of the children who are involved, which I think is excellent.
Stop buying that junk food.
Don't buy too much of these things that have colours and flavours in it.
I'm just going to walk home, go tired, until Mum throw a red fridge.
After 2 weeks of the Eating for Success program, staff and students have seen a difference.
We found that feeding the children in the morning, the social aspect of that, school teaching is a caring role, but it gave an extra dimension to that, and we really enjoyed it.
It's nice and it's healthy, and it makes us improve in our work.
I used to be really naughty in class, and now I'm not naughty as much anymore. They've been a lot calmer, and they haven't been not working, and they haven't been yelling out in class.
They've been all calm and all that, and they don't yell out in class.
My brother used to usually always hurt me, but now he doesn't.
It's my friends. They've been quieter and not as annoying.
It's just been much more harmonious in the classroom, and that's had an effect on the classroom as a whole.
Far more sociable and amiable with each other and settled.
I found certain kids had a longer attention span, and they were able to concentrate and work more effectively for that period of time, yeah.
I'd actually like to see the big companies that are making all the money off these kids be accountable for what they're putting in their foods.
I just found they were a bit more focused and more enthusiastic and more cooperative, and I need that because music can be difficult. It's a very noisy subject, and children want to play with the instruments at the wrong times when I'm trying to speak to them, and I just found they were very cooperative yesterday. Like I said, they were the best they've ever been.
I just found that they were able to relate better to their peers in general, and also to concentrate better in class, which means that you're having fewer behavioural problems.
I didn't think I'd see a lot of changes because my kids eat pretty well anyway. Really thinking about it, they haven't had that snappiness between them except if they've been completely and utterly exhausted.
While he's following the diet, he's calm and he's compliant.
The biggest one that we've seen, that the kids are quieter and calmer. And behaviour is better. Children are more in control. And no headaches, stomach aches or skin rashes.
1 week later, the children were allowed to buy a treat at the swimming pool, and this is what happened.
Hello, this is bad. This is bad food, you know. I know, it's very bad food, but it's tasty, you know that.
And they're fighting and calling one another names and spreading rumours, and so I've had 2 different lots of children in tears in a class of about 23 kids. So I think that's a pretty good indication of what the food colourings and the lollies are doing.
Independent scientists recommend that schools should minimise the use of artificial colours and other food additives that may contribute to behavioural disorders.
When we talk about behavioural reactions to foods, we're talking about food intolerance, not food allergy. It's very important to understand the difference. Food allergy is a reaction to the proteins in food and is relatively rare, affecting less than 1% of adults and less than 8% of children under 3, usually with a family history of eczema, asthma or hay fever. It's a quick reaction, often occurring within minutes, and usually only a few foods are involved. In Australia, they are most likely to be milk, eggs, soy, peanuts or fish. True food allergies are relatively easy to identify, can be confirmed by laboratory tests, and can be life-threatening.
I've got 3 young boys. 2 of them have severe allergies to dairy, peanuts and eggs. We carry EpiPens with us everywhere, which is quite scary at times.
Any form of dairy whatsoever can bring on an anaphylactic reaction. So we have to always have an EpiPen and antihistamines on hand.
Food intolerance is very different. It's a reaction to the chemicals in foods. Food intolerance is more common than food allergy, but much less understood. There's a much wider range of symptoms, including the same as allergy, as well as behaviour problems, migraines and irritable bowel symptoms. It's possible to have both allergies and intolerances. Mothers say that living with the threat of anaphylaxis can be very frightening, especially in a young child, but that the effects of food intolerance can be very stressful as well.
They're both very difficult, but I think when you've got into the routine of managing the avoidance of dairy completely to avoid the allergy aspects, that actually intolerance is harder. If he does have any accidental contact with dairy, antihistamines can fix the problem very quickly, whereas with intolerance his reactions would take 4 weeks to get over, particularly for amines. Intolerance interrupts his whole life. It impacts every other aspect of his life, his behaviour, his learning, his relationships with us, his relationships with his peers.
We were beside ourselves about 2.5 years ago with my oldest son. His behaviour was just off the planet. His kindy teacher was having trouble controlling him. We were having trouble controlling him at home. And to cut a long story short, we went on the fail-safe diet. We followed it through a dietitian and also with the help of Sue. And within 3 days, not only did we notice a huge difference in our oldest son, but my middle son, who is an asthmatic, was waking up less in the night, coughing.
With intolerance, everyone can be affected, children and adults and even breastfed babies, because these food chemicals can pass through breast milk. Intolerance is related to the dose of the chemical, so as the amount of additives in our food supply increase every year, you would expect more kids to be affected, and this is what is happening. Many foods are involved, effects can be delayed up to 2 or 3 days, and they can be cumulative and build up slowly. So it's very difficult to work out what's happening. It generally isn't until the kids stop eating food chemicals that parents can see a difference.
The day we changed the bread to bread made from the local bakery or Baker's Delight or one of the ones who don't use 282, David actually came out one day when he was getting ready for work and said, "Is he still here?" Because it was so noticeable. He wasn't bouncing off the walls. It wasn't taking half an hour to get his socks on and get him organised for school.
Most people who are affected by food chemicals have no idea, and there are no scientifically proven laboratory tests for food intolerance. The only way to find out what is happening is to do an elimination diet. The diet that I recommend as the most scientific and effective in the world is the low chemical elimination diet, introduced in the United States by Dr. Ben Feingold in the 1970s and refined over many years by Australian researchers. This diet was a godsend for us when we were battling with our daughter's behaviour, but it took us 11 years of hell to find it. No parent should ever have to go through what we went through. I thought everyone should know about this, and that's why I'm here. So this is how the elimination diet works. For 3 to 6 weeks, you have to avoid certain food additives and some natural food chemicals called salicylates in most fruit and some vegetables, amines in protein foods, and natural flavour enhancers called glutamates. That's why I like to talk about fail-safe foods, meaning free of additives and low in salicylates, amines and flavour enhancers. As well, it is best to avoid perfumed products, and some children also need to avoid dairy products and wheat or gluten. The next step is to reintroduce one group of food chemicals at a time to find out exactly what's causing the problem. Some children are affected by only one food chemical and some react to most of them. We're going to see police in the UK using a 3-week elimination diet with chronic juvenile offenders. These kids were the worst of the worst. They had an average arrest rate of more than once a month, and you can see the dramatic changes for yourself. The diet I recommend is much easier to do, but gets the same results.
Superintendent Peter Bennett of the West Yorks Police hit the headlines last year when he announced that a juvenile delinquent had given up a life of crime after he'd been discovered to be allergic to milk and tomatoes.
It seems everybody has a favourite cause for crime. I don't go for any single cause at all. There may be a whole range of causes, but one cause that I am convinced needs attention is the question of nutritional health.
It's been known for years that a proportion of children with behaviour problems go on to commit crimes, and Superintendent Bennett wanted to see how many more of the young offenders in his area might be allergic to food. Kids like Dale, a persistent offender.
That's it. Just hold it there.
and 9-year-old Wayne, a young vandal who has already caused over £30,000 worth of criminal damage. Also in trouble with the law, 12-year-old Jason, and a girl, 12-year-old Claire. In all, 8 children were found whose parents agreed to a unique experiment.
There's something to be said for you doing it.
Running it, Dr. Leonard McEwen, a private specialist in food intolerance.
Okay, well, if we can get these to the school teachers and get them to assess them as well, we'll behave.
The children were to be put on the Great Ormond Street Few Foods diet.
What do you want to get out of all this?
Out of what?
Out of doing this diet, what do you think might be in it for you?
Peel.
Are you going to try and stick to it?
No. You've got to. Who says me? It's your fault, isn't it?
Because the Few Foods diet is so complicated and restrictive, it's only done under medical supervision. It's also quite expensive, so for this project, a charity donated the food and delivered it to each of the parents.
Hello, come on in.
But would these problem children accept it? As it turned out, initially all of them did, although somewhat reluctantly. They were asked to continue the diet for 3 weeks and then assemble again to check progress. But within days, everyone had noticed the difference in the children's behaviour.
We know how difficult it was for you to try and manage those diets, and you all managed it almost perfectly. If you could see yourself sitting there, all quiet, compared with how long you could sit still last time we saw you, it is quite amazing.
The improvement in each child surprised and delighted their parents.
I called him the monster, didn't I? And then as he got better, I called him the little angel, which is saying something. But it's true. It was true. I really didn't believe that it were going to do any good. Nothing else we tried had, and I really couldn't see this making that much difference. You know, it's... She's like a completely different person. Everything about her is just completely different. If I hadn't have seen it in my own daughter, I'd never have believed it could be done just by changing the food that she ate.
Only a few weeks before, these two were almost at each other's throats. But how have the police seen the difference?
We found, with the introduction of the dietary changes, some dramatic improvements in behaviour. So much so that it surprised some of us ourselves. We didn't expect it to be so dramatic.
Behaviour isn't the only effect of food chemicals. Food intolerance runs in families, and here are some of the symptoms: migraines, headaches, itchy skin rashes, eczema, hives, nappy rash, thrush, irritable bowel symptoms, bloating, mouth ulcers, bedwetting, sneaky poos, stuffy or runny nose, throat clearing, frequent colds and flu, asthma, irritability, depression, fatigue, sleep disturbance, PMS, hyperactivity, and others, including arthritis, fast heartbeat, epilepsy, and many more. So now we're going to look at the 5 main categories in more detail.
The prevalence of migraines in both adults and children in developed countries has at least tripled since the 1970s, with over 20% of households now containing at least one migraine sufferer.
A family history of migraines is a sign of a food intolerant family. Everyone is different, and any symptom can be aggravated by any food chemical, but research shows that headaches and migraines are most likely to be associated with MSG, preservatives, salicylates and amines. Natalie's headaches are related to MSG.
I know when there's MSG in food, and it doesn't have to be too much, because within 10 minutes of eating I will start to get heart palpitations. I will also then start to get a headache and I get exceptionally irritable.
But Natalie's migraines are related to amines.
My migraines are fairly serious. They're classified as classical focal neural migraines. So they include, paralysis down one side, inability to speak, loss of sight. Pain's only about 40% of the whole problem of the scariness of having a migraine, and that's excruciating. So, sticking to the diet's well worth my while.
I tend to get really bad headaches when I have certain foods that have amines in them. I remember one time at school camp, there was this huge bowl of mandarins, and I went through pretty much the whole thing, and then later that night I had the worst pain in my head that you can possibly imagine. Like, I was actually screaming from the pain. I don't remember much of that night, but it's all dose related, so I might eat some tuna and get sort of a mild warning headache, or maybe a couple of bars of chocolate and get a worse one. But yeah, obviously with pain like that, I don't break the diet very often because it's just not worth it.
With salicylates, when he has them, it's a big reaction, very hyperactive, he seems to go quite crazy. And then it's within a couple of hours he goes on a real downer. And this can keep going for days, up and down and up and down. But as soon as he starts to go down, the headache, and he just, he can be in pain. He's just my head, and he has to lay down and he'll be crying. I remember when he was a bit younger, probably 4 or 5, he would just be crying, Mum, my head. And it was all to do with salicylate.
Australia has one of the highest incidences of eczema in the world, with about 1 Australian in 3 affected at some stage during their lives. Most children grow out of eczema, but for some it is a lifelong problem. The prevalence of eczema has increased 2 to 3-fold since the 1970s.
Eczema can be related to food allergy or food intolerance. Allergy is generally a quick reaction, but if it's a food your child is having every day, such as dairy, it can be difficult to identify. With intolerance, reactions are often delayed, so some sufferers take years to pinpoint the cause of their rashes. The most likely culprits are preservatives, salicylates and other additives.
The groin and underarm area, sweaty parts of my body are affected by sulfites, most notably 223. It's a scary one. And I've recently taken 320 out of my diet, and it helped clear up a bit of remaining rash that was on my back.
She would be very emotional, lots of crying, lots of whinging, lots of whining with salicylates. But as soon as she'd have too many, the spots would start.
Most people don't realise that nappy rash and thrush can be related to food chemicals.
From about the introduction of solids, our son had a really bad nappy rash, to the extent that he's had courses of antibiotics and prednisolone to treat it. And it took us a long time to get a handle on it. And slowly but surely we started to realise it was food related. Things like soy sauce, grapes, Vegemite sandwich, and all of a sudden we get a nappy rash. And eventually we tweaked that maybe it was glutamates, and we dropped the glutamates from the diet and the nappy rash mysteriously went away.
Actually, she got really bad nappy rashes, so obviously it was then as well, but it wasn't until she couldn't verbalise what was going on. She'll go to sleep some nights and she'd just wake up absolutely screaming in pain, Mum, vagina, and it was just all rashy and red raw. She's been to 2 parties where I haven't been able to be there and send her with someone else to look after her, and she's come back and, within half an hour of being asleep that night, just waking up screaming, and it's all night of screaming with thrush. And that's obviously from additives. They'd let her have a little bit of something, She had a little bit, but no, but she was fine. Went down to the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, and it wasn't until I went there that it clicked to me that it was being caused from salicylates, because she didn't have the behaviour type things like Zach did, and I didn't think she was affected as much as as Zach was.
Skin reactions can include swelling of the eyes, lips or tongue. This is medically known as angioedema.
I found that sulfides in beer cause a reaction with my hands. I get eczema on them, and my eyes. I get eczema all over my eyelids. They get very flaky and swollen and uncomfortable, and that can last for a while, like a few days at least. Easy. But yeah, since I've stopped drinking beer, no more eczema.
People who have developed mysterious skin rashes in the last 10 years need to know about a new set of food additives. Called the nucleotide group of flavour enhancers, they interact with MSG to make the flavour enhancing effects up to 15 times stronger. As well as the usual symptoms of food intolerance, these additives can cause itchy skin rashes hours or even days later, so most people don't realise what has affected them.
In England and the USA, you can actually report adverse reactions to food additives, but in Australia there's no government agency you can report any of this to. They're not interested.
We have received hundreds of reports about the effects of these new flavour enhancers. This rash in a 3-year-old boy was due to chicken-flavoured rice crackers. This one was caused by chicken-flavoured 2-minute noodles. This product, flavour enhancer in butter, caused 2 months of severe rash in twin 10-month-old boys. For some people, exposure to nucleotide flavour enhancers can make them much more sensitive. In this case, Jennifer started with a chronic rash caused by daily exposure to rice crackers, but by the time she discovered the culprit 2 years later, she was also experiencing alarming swelling of the eyes, lips and tongue.
When this one was about 18 months old, we keep getting recurrent rash. And we took her to the GP and he said, well, I can't find anything obviously wrong, she's not unwell. But she kept getting sent home from daycare and we kept taking her to the GP and they tried cortisone creams and all sorts, and the rash was on her tummy and on her legs and under her arms. And one day, after about 3 weeks of this, seeing the doctor about 3 times a week, I was leaving daycare having seen the doctor, and she was getting really upset because Dad was leaving, and one of the staff turned and said, oh, here Rochelle, have a lovely chicken flavoured biscuit. I turned on the spot and sort of said, you're doing what? And sure enough, there was all sorts of things in the biscuits, including 635. So we stopped the biscuits, and 3 or 4 days later, the spots disappeared. We haven't seen them since. But ever since then, she's had a sensitivity that gives her hives.
But I also get what I was told was a spasm of the esophagus, and I start off thinking I was getting indigestion, and it would just pull really tight in my chest. And it would last for hours, and I thought I was dying.
Irritable bowel symptoms are now thought to affect about 20% of people in developed countries, compared to almost none in countries still following a traditional lifestyle. Some experts think that antibiotic overuse could be to blame.
Again, any food chemical can be a problem, but some of the most likely suspects are MSG, preservatives and salicylates. The symptoms can include reflux and colic in babies and adults, frequent mouth ulcers, bedwetting, urinary urgency and daytime incontinence in both adults and children.
He also had problems with bedwetting that turned out to be a salicylate problem.
Also, bloating, stomach aches, diarrhoea and or constipation. It can be alternating. Toddler diarrhoea and sneaky poos.
With dirtying his undies that turned out to be an amine problem.
He had up to 6 sloppy poos a day, and now he's just sort of a regular once a day boy, and yeah, quite normal.
And there's one more, a feeling of incomplete evacuation. This is sometimes called sticky poos because they can be hard to clean up. I can guarantee to you that no child will ever say, "Mummy, I have a feeling of incomplete evacuation." And most parents have no idea that food additives or salicylates in fruit and vegetables can be the culprits.
His main stomach problems were the type of poos he was doing. It's been more so when he's older that the incomplete evacuation, not being able to finish his poos, knowing he needs to finish but it's not coming out, gets very traumatised. Also when he was younger it was the sneaky poos, not knowing when he needed to go to the toilet and then it'd be too late. We've had lots of problems. His main problem is his tummy. He could not poo it was so related to food.
There's one more group of additives you need to know about here. It's the sugar-free sweeteners, such as sorbitol. These additives don't cause children's behaviour problems or any of the other symptoms we've been talking about, but they can cause bloating, gas, stomach cramps and diarrhoea. Any product containing these sweeteners must contain the warning, excess consumption may have a laxative effect. But consumers find this sign very misleading. Some people, especially babies, can be affected by the smallest serve. The effects are generally many hours later and the symptoms can be really severe, sudden diarrhoea and excruciating stomach cramps, or they can build up slowly as a frequent gas problem and stomach aches if you eat these sweeteners every day. People are sometimes diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome and given medication for months when their only problem is a daily health food bar or a vitamin supplement sweetened with sorbitol.
Australia's rate of childhood asthma has risen from 10% in the 1970s to around 30% today. It's one of the highest rates of childhood asthma in the world, and asthma is the leading cause of school absence.
Asthma is different from other food intolerance symptoms because most asthmatics react to only 1 or 2 food additives.
I had asthma, and since we've just removed a lot of the additives and preservatives from our diet, it's just no longer an issue at all. I don't need any preventers or puffers.
About 20% of asthmatics are affected by salicylates, and they will need to consider a full elimination diet. But for the majority of asthmatic children, it can be ridiculously easy to get rid of asthma just by avoiding additives. You can see what happened when Jamie Oliver introduced fresh, natural, additive-free meals in London schools.
A month in, 5,000 kids in 15 schools are being served Jamie's dinners. And staff are already noticing some surprising changes.
A lot of improvement behaviour-wise. Their reading, writing, concentration's really come up, hasn't it? Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is actually. They're calm, they get on with their work. And normally afternoons,
see, for
they
me,
lose concentration, but they're still carrying on working.
Well, every day I used to come in and use the asthma pumps at lunchtime
so
on children who needed them.
Right, so all the kids that needed asthma.
We've got.
And you're in charge of that?
Yeah, and I've not used them since.
What?
No, I've not used an asthma pump since we started.
Not only has behaviour improved, but health has improved as well. Unbelievable. I'm totally dumbfounded. At primary school, with little kids, you just change the food and then you don't have to be ramming all those chemicals and drugs down them. You know, if the government's going to carry on ignoring these things because they don't want to add another 10p or 15p to a plate or invest in training dinner ladies, then surely that's just an endorsement saying that the government don't give a shit about our kids at all.
So that's what happened at Wingfield Primary School. As soon as the school dinners changed, students stopped needing asthma medication. The question is, why don't asthmatics make the connection themselves? And the answer is, most people don't see the connection between what they eat and how they are affected unless they see a reaction within 30 minutes. When asthmatic children eat or drink certain additives, their airways can be irritated with no obvious symptoms. The asthma doesn't happen until they are exposed to an external trigger, such as exercise or a virus. The external trigger gets the blame, but if you remove the additives from the diet, then these kids can be exposed to the external triggers and they won't get asthma.
Since about 18 months of age, he's had asthma on and off. And it took us a while to work out what was going on, but one of the things that was happening was every time he ate dried fruit, 3 or 4 days later, he'd be sensitive to things. So if he had a chest infection, he'd get an asthma attack where normally he wouldn't. If it had a cold snap in the middle of the night, like around springtime, he'd have an asthma attack, starting out coughing, just as a cough, and then it would develop into a full-blown asthma attack. And we realised that if we could keep the dried fruit and the sulfites out of his diet, a lot of these problems would go away.
Sulfite preservatives are the additives most likely to affect asthmatics. As you can see, these are all foods eaten frequently by young children who also have the highest rates of asthma. Other additives that can affect asthmatics include benzoate preservatives in drinks and medication, including asthma medication, and this is something that some doctors are starting to complain about. But it takes many years for findings in medical journals to make a difference to what consumers can buy, and that's why you have to be an informed consumer.
Since the 70s, the number of children on stimulant drugs for behaviour or learning difficulties has increased 40-fold. Since the 90s, there has been a dramatic increase in the numbers of young children using antidepressant medication, including 3,000 Prozac prescriptions for babies under the age of 12 months in the USA.
When I mention behaviour, most people think of hyperactivity, but there's a huge range of symptoms, including the quiet ones who are often overlooked. Some of the main symptoms are foggy brain, disorganised, forgetful, and difficulty concentrating. Everything I say applies equally to children and adults, so if you were one of those mothers, like me, who had amnesia of pregnancy and it didn't go away after you had your baby, consider that you might be food intolerant yourself.
And we both felt as though we could think a lot clearer as well.
Gee, more clarity, yeah, not so foggy in the head, yeah.
These are the kids who always forget their homework, their lunch boxes, their towels.
He was just much more organised, less forgetful, less anxious. Just an amazing change.
When 800 New York schools introduced a low additive school lunch program, the number of students classified as learning disabled dropped from over 12% to less than 5% in just 4 years.
The report card always says, could do better if they tried, but it's not a lack of trying. Something in their food is stopping these children from concentrating.
Speech therapist would be looking at Ashley and then she would turn around and look at me with this total look of amazement of like, what have you done? Just this transformation in 10 weeks. She improved in 10 weeks, 12 months with her comprehension and 7 months with her reading. It's just amazing. That was amazing to me.
He can spell much better. His handwriting's improved immensely. From underachieving in maths, when I went to his maths teacher to say, look, this is weird, this child's really bright at maths, what's going on, to after a few weeks on the diet, he was back to top of the class.
I cut out getting Maccas or any junk food like that about 6 months ago. Kind of felt really low self-esteem and everything, and then I've started to feel better, and more optimistic, and I don't have much problem with anything anymore, and I can be confident, and schoolwork's way easier to do, and even Mr. D would say I've been doing more of my homework.
I find that dairy products also have sort of an effect on concentration. I'm okay with creative subjects, but when it comes to mathematics, to logical thinking, it's like there's this fog and I just can't concentrate on what I'm trying to do. It's really frustrating. We were trying that one time with yogurt and I just found my grease started slipping and I couldn't think about anything. It was awful. I'd hate to have that all the time.
Since 1945, there has been a 10-fold increase in major depression.
Most people aren't aware that anxiety, panic attacks or depression in both children and adults can be associated with food chemicals.
And our youngest one had great anxiety at school, and when we took on the diet we decided to do that for our eldest son, but we included the youngest one, and we weren't aware that at the same time it would actually help our child who had anxiety problems. We noticed the younger one improving as well, and his confidence started to return, and within the school they noticed the difference probably within about a week as well.
When I eat bananas and chocolate, I get really irritated and annoyed. I cry and get depressed, and I get into trouble really easily.
That a lot of my anxiety and depression that I've carried for years, that's food related. Amy's out of my diet, I'm an awful lot better. So that was wonderful, and much more energy, less sort of falling asleep at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I highly recommend it for mothers and fathers and everybody just to try.
The 4 of us did it, and I noticed immediately too that I was much calmer, and the same thing, probably not as anxious. And I think through having children like this, I would probably say that I probably did have some depression, because it got to the point where he was just so hard to deal with. It was just a depressing experience, and I didn't realise it at the time until I went onto the fail-safe. That just, was resolved.
Everyone thinks that hyperactivity is the main behavioural effect of food chemicals, but it isn't. It's irritability. And it's really important to understand what irritability is. If you have an irritable child who is doing something that he likes, such as playing with toys, then he'll be fine. But if you ask him to do something he doesn't like, for instance, get ready for school, then that child is going to overreact.
I was literally at the stage last year of leaving. I had had enough. The whole family life was just awful. It was like World War III every day. We were yelling all the time, just trying to get the simplest things done. He would do nothing that we asked him. The simplest thing was just met with a flat no or a slam.
You might see hyperactivity in children after a party, but mostly it's restlessness, fidgeting, can't stay in their seat, can't sit still.
For example, Lindsay used to be almost non-stop motion. She was just twitchy, fidgety. At that time she was about 4 years old, and if Heather was holding her, she'd just be scratching, scrabbling at her non-stop, unable to sit still, just unable to control her motions. She couldn't settle to do something that required concentration and stability, like drawing, sketching, all the sort of normal stuff that children do, because she physically couldn't control her body motion, so it made it very difficult for her. But once Heather had put Lindsay on the diet, I think there was a point where Heather realised Lindsay had been quiet for a while and went in and just saw her lying on the bedroom floor or something like that, just lying calm and still, and realised what a huge difference this was going to make. And we've never looked back since, basically. Well, this is Lindsay, this is our little star, and see how still she sits. Wasn't always the case.
It's as if my legs are prickling, and I have this uncontrollable urge to twist my feet, to move my legs, and the more I try to control my legs from moving, the more they will want to twitch. And when they twitch very strongly, which makes it very hard to sit in a movie theatre or go for a trip on a plane or a train. The causes for me are mainly natural food chemicals, foods very high in salicylates and MSG. Artificial chemicals will also cause restless legs, along with environmental factors such as perfumes and cleaning fluids.
Sleep disturbance is the one that drives parents mad, and I know all about this one. It can be insomnia, that's difficulty falling asleep or frequent night waking, restless legs, night terrors, sleepwalking or weird dreams. It can be any or all of these, in children and adults.
After I eat green food colouring, it happens all at once because it starts going through my body, and first of all it gets to my head, I think, and it just confuses my brain a bit and I just can't get to sleep, and usually the only time I can get to sleep is about an hour later or an hour and a half, about 9 o'clock or 9:30. I only go to bed at 8. And that night I can't sleep, and when I finally do, my mind is set on funny things, and I have these weird dreams, and in the mornings I wake up, I'm tired, I'm a bit miserable, and I go a bit silly.
Since then we've learnt that flavourings, colours, a whole heap of preservatives all cause similar problems. Either that he's unable to go to sleep with restless legs, or that when he is asleep he'll wake up multiple times in the night.
Well, from 2 weeks he wasn't sleeping, screaming all the time. Until the age of about 2.5 we realised salicylates and we found the elimination diet, and then by the age of 3 he was sleeping through as a result.
Everyone was sleeping through the night, including my husband and I, which was lovely.
There's a wide range of other symptoms that bother parents, including loud voice, motor or vocal tics, and talking too much.
He had this really annoying habit of just empty chatter, they call it, just talking all the time. Like you couldn't watch a television program without him commentating all the way through. Chatter.
But the one that really gets parents is silly noises. Silly noises can be anything. Chickens, trucks, tuneless humming, squealing. But you'll know they're silly noises if 1, they drive you mad, and 2, they improve when you change what your child eats.
I can't say silly noises only if I have silly foods.
A lot of parents say to me, well, we tried the diet and it didn't work. And when I ask them which diet, they say, we took out food colouring. But you have to understand that the prime suspects with behaviour are preservatives and salicylates as well as colours. So if you only avoid colours, you're not going to see a lot of difference. Some families see a big improvement just by cutting down. But basically, the better you do the diet, the bigger the improvements. To get best results, you have to take it seriously. Remember that irritability is the main behavioural effect of food chemicals. It's also the core feature of oppositional defiance, and these are the other symptoms. Losing temper, arguing with adults, refusing requests and defying rules, deliberately annoying others, blaming others for their own mistakes, touchy and easily annoyed, angry and resentful, spiteful or vindictive. These are the kids who are hard to live with and hard to teach.
And she went into what the paediatrician called terrible twos early, but it was extreme. It was like temper tantrums for 4.5 hours, 5 hours. She would just constantly scream travelling in the car. She had what they called oppositional defiance behaviour. She would spit in your face, she would scratch your face, she would slap you, and you could never ever see it coming. Initially, it just came out of the left field. A friend of ours gave us the book Fed Up, and it was like written about Emma. You know, that's Emma, that's Emma, that's Emma, oh no, that's Emma. And my daughter then decided because of the age of the child, she went cold turkey and decided it was a salicylate-free diet. And within 7 days, it was like God took away this child and gave us this child.
It took Susan years of hell to work out that food chemicals such as salicylates and MSG can cause this kind of behaviour in her son.
He is very violent, kicks holes in walls, kicks me, punches me, breaks furniture. It took us 6 years of diet, behaviour management and finally medication before he was totally sorted out. But he very rarely digresses from the diet, because if he does, he feels unwell and his behaviour deteriorates, and then he knows that he's got to go back on it because he's old enough now to know. He's in the top maths group, the top English group. He was a prefect for his final year 6 at primary school this year, and he got 40 merit card awards and 3 of the top school awards last year and this year. So he's doing very well now.
Autistic spectrum disorders affect communication, social interaction, and creative or imaginative play. Since the 1970s, rates of autism are thought to have increased tenfold in the USA.
Autistic kids are generally very food sensitive. They can have all the problems that we've talked about so far, especially tantrums and speech delay, but they can also have their own range of problems, including inflexibility, lack of eye contact, hand flapping and rocking. If these kids are put on a diet at all, it is common to put them on a gluten-free, casein-free diet. And in my experience, that is not nearly enough. It is far more effective to try the full elimination diet, free of additives, low in salicylates and amines, dairy-free, gluten-free and low in perfumes, supervised by an experienced dietitian.
He has Asperger's syndrome and ADHD type of disability, which meant that he was really out of control in terms of controlling his aggression. He was really quite violent. As a 3-year-old, he had incredible strength, and if someone said something simple like, please can you turn off the TV, he would go completely aggro and throw furniture around the room and rip books. And he did this at preschool. more than he did at home. And you know, obviously that was something that we couldn't possibly allow to continue, and so we were looking for some help to see what the problem might be. And we went to a paediatrician in Darwin who suggested that we should try him on the diet. And after that, that pretty much resolved all our problems. He still has ongoing Asperger's type syndrome symptoms, but it's something that we can mostly keep under control, and certainly the violent behaviour hasn't been a problem, except when occasionally he sort of slips off the diet a bit. But
we went on to the fail-safe diet and found that it's just made such a huge difference to him. I don't claim for a minute that he's cured, but all of his symptoms seem to have just decreased, and it's like the mental fog has lifted and he started to kind of progress and pick up from where he'd sort of stopped progressing at about 18 months. And physically he's just healthier. His bowel problems have cleared up as well. He's just much more able to learn and better able to cope with things that he would not have coped with before. Ethan's language has improved out of sight. He was at 3.5 diagnosed with a severe speech disorder. He could speak, but he didn't really make a lot of sense. And since we've changed his diet, his language has just grown out of sight, and now he's sort of at an age-appropriate developmental level speech-wise, and he's quite understandable and makes sense.
While on the subject of autism, we need to look a bit more at perfumes and other VOCs.
VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, are chemicals that go to a gaseous state very easily at room temperature so you can smell them. They include perfumed personal and cleaning products, solvents, and pesticides.
In a recent study in the USA, autistic children were put on a diet while in a specially controlled clean room, free of VOCs. The researcher concluded that a broad spectrum of severe autistic symptoms were fully reversible and that the children in the program returned to normal. This is an extraordinary claim, but we do see big changes. Mothers say, but we can't lock our kids up in a clean room for their whole lives. Well, that's true, we can't, but we can change what they eat, and we can reduce their exposure to VOCs at home and at school. And it's not only autistics who are affected by VOCs.
If I walk through the perfume department of Grace Brothers, my whole body reacts and goes prickly, not just my legs.
As with additives, the most sensitive people notice the effects, but the majority don't realise they are affected until they remove the VOCs and suddenly feel much better.
I have 2 boys. They're both very sensitive to food, but they're also incredibly sensitive to smells, perfumes, aromas, things like that. They're chemically sensitive as well as food sensitive. School is really hard. Going anywhere can be hard, but school particularly, because they need to go to school. Every morning I go into school, I need to check the building. Has somebody cleaned with smelly cleaning products? Are the teachers wearing perfume? Has somebody got really fragrant hair shampoo or hairspray on? If any of that has occurred, I need to take the kids home. They can't stay, they won't learn anything. But apart from that, they'll also react for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That's a long time to suffer because somebody wore perfume in the environment that they needed to be in. There's no way that we can afford to do it, so we just have to vacate the premises and try again tomorrow.
Someone's applied perfume and I'm near them. Generally I just want to get away from them. I don't even like the smell anymore, but if I cannot get away from them, I get a headache at first, and then I can't think clearly, I run out of energy, I start feeling depressed, and this lasts for about 4 or 5 days. I missed 4 years of school because of this issue, and when I did eventually go back, I still had to be separated during exams and had to go out of the room sometimes when people had applied large amounts of deodorant.
Now, let's have a good look at what our kids are eating.
Obviously, the first items to look at are nasty additives. Not counting flavours, there are hundreds of approved food additives and most of them are harmless. These are the additives most likely to affect you. Colours, preservatives, synthetic antioxidants, flavour enhancers and added flavours. Now we're going to have a look at some examples. Ingredients change frequently, so what you see here could be different when you find it in a shop. You always need to read the label. If you buy foods like this, then it's pretty obvious that you're getting artificial colours. But if you buy foods like this, it's not so obvious. There are as many artificial colours in this as there are in the Fruit Loops. So you need to read the ingredients list. This one is a bit more of a trap. It contains a natto natural colour, 160B. It's the only natural colour that affects some children as badly as artificial colour, or maybe even worse, because the effect can be delayed and it can last longer. When you buy drinks, a lot of them have preservatives or colours. This cordial has 2 artificial colours and 2 preservatives, so you're giving your child 4 chances of having asthma or being naughty. One time I was giving a talk to the staff of a detention centre. Before I went, I found they were giving the kids heaps of cordial, so I took this along with me. When I got to this stage of the talk, I held it up and there was an embarrassed silence. Someone eventually confessed that the week before my talk they had withdrawn cordial as a punishment and all the kids had improved, and they were going, "Oh, this is great, this punishment really works." When I held this up, they suddenly realised why the punishment was working. So, no more cordial. Plain water is the best drink. There's something else you need to know. Some manufacturers are using names instead of numbers for their nasty additives. That means to be an informed consumer, you'll have to learn names as well as numbers. Still on the subject of drinks, this is a children's medication that contains the same type of nasty preservatives and colours as the cordial. You'd think you could buy medication that doesn't make children worse. Now here's another labelling trap. A lot of people look at these labels here and it says no preservatives, no artificial colours, no artificial flavours, and they think that means there are no nasty additives at all. But something that is labelled like that can still contain flavour enhancers. Artificial flavours and flavour enhancers are not the same thing. So this one actually contains 621 and 635, the dreaded 600 numbers. Heaps of products commonly eaten by children contain flavour enhancers. Out they go. Next, a lot of people think that antioxidants are good, and they are if they're natural. But there are some synthetic antioxidants that can cause nasty side effects, including behaviour problems and depression. And there are 2 of them in here, 319 and 320. These antioxidants are commonly used in oils, margarines and spreadable butters and products like this that contain those oils or margarines. So most people are eating these antioxidants every day and simply aren't aware of it. And there is an extra trap here, the 5% labelling loophole. This says that if the amount of an ingredient in a product is less than 5%, then they don't have to list the additives in that ingredient on the label. And so to find out that this product actually contains BHA, you have to ring the consumer hotline and ask them. So most consumers don't know it's there, but it is still enough to affect sensitive children, especially if they eat it every day. Now I want to talk about the bread preservative. In my opinion, this is the worst of all additives because it's in a healthy food eaten every day. Parents don't know it's there and they have no idea it can affect their children. Very few children react to 1 dose of this preservative, but effects can build up slowly over several weeks, so parents have no chance of working out what's going on. You have to look at the label, and here it says preservative 282. This additive was quietly introduced into most Australian breads in the 1990s, and like all other additives, it was never tested for its effects on children's learning or behaviour before approval. I noticed it because we had just moved to Darwin, where the bakers were probably the first in the world to use the maximum amounts of this preservative. First, I noticed the effect slowly built up in my daughter, and then later we noticed the kids in our support group got worse every September when the amount of the preservative was doubled for the wet season. I complained many times to our food regulators, but they said they did not want to hear from consumers, they only wanted to hear from scientists. So I did a double-blind placebo-controlled study on the effects of this preservative on children's behaviour, which was published in a medical journal. Since then, I've heard from thousands of families who've switched to preservative-free bread and seen their kids improve.
How it came about was that somebody just mentioned to me additive 282, which is the additive which is used in most breads in Australia, and how it had not been tested on children's behaviour or learning difficulties. And we took the bread out of his diet, and literally the next day and over the next few days we noticed an amazing change. It was like...
One of the worst stories I've heard about is little Christopher from Western Australia. When Christopher was born, he screamed about 18 hours a day, every day, for the first 10 weeks of his life, at which time he and his mother were admitted to hospital because, understandably, she wasn't coping. Then someone thought to put her on the low chemical elimination diet, and it turned out the problem was some food chemicals, especially the bread preservative, going through her breast milk. There is some good news in all this. So many consumers have decided they don't want preserved bread that two of the biggest bread manufacturers in Australia are now phasing out their use of this preservative. But there can still be other nasties in bread, such as antioxidants, that don't have to be labelled. So I recommend Brumby's and Baker's Delight as being the safest bread that you can buy. Moving on to unlabelled products, this is pretty interesting. If you buy ready-made food, like this ham and cheese sandwich from a sandwich shop, you don't know what you're getting. So you have to look at the ingredients in a supermarket. I did that, and I found that you can get anywhere between 1 and 10 nasty additives in a simple ham and cheese sandwich, because you can have up to 2 nasty additives in the bread, 2 in the cheese slices, 3 in the spread, and 3 in the ham. So you can end up with as many additives as junk food. You have to know what you're doing. And speaking of junk food, Jamie Oliver is going to show us how it's made.
With the food just about back on budget and most of the kids now eating it, Jamie has one last trick up his sleeve.
I actually feel sick.
He wants to convince the kids not to demand their junk back when he's gone.
What I'm trying to do today is show the kids what is in their nuggets, unless they're getting good ones. These are the kids that won't eat my chicken. You know, these are the kids that want their nuggets back. So I want to show them what's in their nuggets. Guys, you got a choice, right? What's that?
Chicken nuggets.
Right? What's this?
Veggies. Sweet stuff. Veggies.
Put your hand up if you want chicken oven and chips. Right, this is the problem. Mechanically reclaimed meat. Do you know what that represents?
Machines.
Okay, it does represent machines. Once they've taken the breast off and the legs off, what are they left with?
Chicken.
The carcass.
That's how you make that red bit, isn't it?
Yeah. So that is a really bad version of mechanically reclaimed meat. Then what they do is they add more chicken skin. That is how that part is made. Fat. Your mechanically reclaimed meat. Right, then you put a load of breadcrumbs in. This is all the E numbers, this is like the dextrose, all of that sort of stuff. Right? So if I've got a product that looks a little bit like this.
Is that how baked beans are made?
How can I no, nothing to do with baked beans.
So this is fake food.
That I personally believe that is fake food. Anyone one of these?
No.
Help yourself to chicken.
Get me
It's put me off chicken nuggets and everything like that for quite a long time.
Do you not know how they were made?
Well, we didn't have a clue.
Why not?
I don't know. We don't look at the back of the boxes, but now we know to.
If you would like to see food manufacturers reduce their use of nasty additives, remember that every time you buy this food, you are saying to the manufacturer, that's okay, keep on using these additives. If consumers choose additive-free foods, food manufacturers will make more of them. Okay, just when you thought, right, I'm never going to eat additives again, I'll stick to healthy fruit and veggies, I'm really sorry about this, but there are some other possible problem foods you need to know about, and these are the natural food chemicals. Salicylates are chemicals that protect plants from insects and diseases. Some fruit and vegetables are low in salicylates, and at the other end of the range, some of them are really high. These are just a few of them.
And it was very interesting when we did the challenges. When you put them on the elimination diet for a few weeks, you then challenge each of the food chemicals which they might react to. And so at Christmas, we challenged him on salicylates, which are found in a lot of fruits and vegetables. And he's always had a very high fruit and veg diet. And he was very interesting. About 2 hours after we gave him lots of cherries and stone fruits and things like that, he got much louder, he got very hyperactive, and over the next few days he just got more and more stupid. It was like this big fog comes down over his brain.
Yeah, we know when Gemma's had the wrong foods with the wrong salicylates in foods. She doesn't sleep proper, she gets eczema. Yes, she's just not herself, not her happy little self. She's always very smiley and very cuddly. But yeah, she gets quite grisly and makes little noises like, oh, like there's something wrong, but just don't know what.
Then we have another class of natural food chemicals called amines. These are in protein foods such as chocolate and cheese, and they increase with age or processing. You probably aren't aware that our supermarkets recently switched to a new method of meat distribution where most of the meat comes in vacuum packed. Then it is repacked and sold as fresh. But what you can be eating as fresh meat can be up to 10 weeks old. Vacuum packing inhibits the growth of bacteria, but it doesn't do anything to slow the development of amines. So for people who are sensitive to amines, this can be a problem. There are also amines in some fruit and vegetables.
And when we did the amines, which are the food chemicals found in protein foods like meat and chocolate, peanuts, he just gets very, very hypersensitive, just dissolves in a great weeping flood of tears on the floor if anything goes wrong.
Here are just a few of the foods that contain both salicylates and amines. They're concentrated by processing. So, for example, orange juice is higher than oranges, tomato sauce is higher than tomatoes, and now you are starting to realise the extent of the problem. There are very few children who don't have some of these foods every day. So by now you're wondering, what can we eat? Is there anything left? Well, the answer is, it depends on what you are sensitive to. Most people can manage most grains as long as they are additive-free, but some people will have to go gluten-free. Eggs and most meats are okay as long as they are fresh and additive-free. With fruit and vegetables, if you are sensitive to salicylates or amines, then you can eat fruit and vegetables that are low in salicylates or amines. Some people can manage dairy products as long as they are additive-free, but for children with behaviour problems and many other symptoms of food intolerance, there's a new and very easy alternative called A2 milk. This contains a different type of protein, which is what all milk contained originally until 40,000 years ago when there was a mutation in the European herd. It's now available in many supermarkets. For people who need to go completely dairy-free, there's soy milk and rice milk. I've included alcohol because I wanted to show you that this diet doesn't have to make you miserable. Gin, vodka and whiskey are the fail-safe drinks of choice, but that's for the adults, not for the children. But seriously, water is the best drink. I've also included sugar because a lot of people think that sugar causes children's behaviour problems, but it doesn't. It's the other ingredients in with the sugar, such as food colouring or salicylates in the fruit flavours. Most people have no idea that a craving for sugar can actually be a salicylate reaction. Honey and raw sugar contain salicylates, but white sugar and icing sugar are okay, so it is possible to make fail-safe treats for children. What you've seen here is mostly ingredients that can be made into delicious meals, and you can see this at this fail-safe morning tea. A lot of parents say, well, this sounds too hard. I don't want to do the full diet. Some families find just by cutting down, they can see a big difference. You can switch to preservative-free bread, water is the best drink, avoid artificial colours and other nasty additives, cut down on citrus, tomatoes and broccoli. For a lot of people, that will make an improvement. But some parents find that their kids turn into nagging, whining monsters because food additives can be addictive. They actually set up cravings.
Surprisingly, with the diet, they lose the addiction which food additives have on the children, so it's much easier to influence better food.
So if your kids get worse, or if you want to get the best results possible, you can do the elimination diet, supervised by a dietitian.
It was such a positive experience that it wasn't hard, even though it does take a lot of time because there's a lot of food preparation. We actually found we had more time anyway because we weren't dealing with conflict.
Something that we have recommended to many families, and we think that it's important that all families look at the food that they're feeding their children and themselves.
So much better at school and so much better at home on the elimination diet, just eating very plain foods, that we would never go back. It's easy.
Some people say it must be hard being on fail-safe. First 2 weeks I cried and cried and cried trying to work out what to feed her. But now as soon as somebody says that, the first thing I say is it was hard before fail-safe.
For more information, see Sue Dengate's books and the Food Intolerance Network website www.fedup.com.au. You can email for a list of supportive dietitians.
Go. Okay, off we go.
And you roll.
I'm rolling.
And action.
That's the wrong page, Howard.
And
You can't punish an ODD child into being good. You have to love them into it. Experts recommend. I'm sorry. Did I say ODD or ODDD? It's probably
just
okay.
said ODD.
Right. Well.
Really high. This is guaranteed the last time we're gonna do it. So this is the last take we're doing of the day. So, action.
This technique won't work when your children. Right.
Oh.